What you think about when you're born into a fire? Let them burn it out. Sell them to the richest buyer. They wanna let the world decay. They tell us lies and fade away, fade away. We feel betrayed. We were raised to lose the race. Wake at the back of the pack, kill it anyway. Listen up now, because we're never dropping out. Beat the odds, beat the big house. The brains are bigger than the doubt.
What is up, Internet? I'm Aries Van Dam.
Never let the truth fade away.
Happy Wednesday. I am your Gen X genius, your salt and pepper savant, your shaman of logic. And this is my co-host, Ozzy. Look at the cutie. He's adorable when you give him food. Here we are. So, please help me get monetized. If you're watching these on a regular basis, please throw a subscription up there so I don't have to do ads or do any of the shit that I hate other people doing. I just want to be an asshole for about 2 hours every couple of days on the internet. That's it. I'm not trying to get famous. I don't want any of that. Not even my real name. You're gonna have to bear with me today. I'm working with some new tech. I finally got my Stream Deck working. So maybe I won't hit the wrong button as many times. Yay! Oh, also, do not do memberships. Do not super chat. None of that. I know it's up. I can't take it down for 20 days, and then I have to start all over again because YouTube doesn't know how to fix anything. They don't care. Oh, and a little tip. If you ever have to deal with the people at YouTube, they don't like it when you tell them they're a blue-haired piece of shit. They stop talking to you at that point. So, oh, and to address the trolls in the comments, I'm not going to do an entire debate in the comment section with you. If you're too pussy or too ugly to get in front of a camera, then shut up and go the fuck away. But I'm still going to reply because you're helping my engagement. But I'm just going to give you emojis after a while because you're just too boring and too cowardly to mess with. So some of you are not understanding the comment section is not where I do debates. I do them here on this channel, and you're invited. All you got to do is grow some nuts. So, oh, and also Sean Strickland for president. Let's get into it. Today's debate is a really good one. It's a little older. This one is 11 months old. And the second one is going to be Ana Kasparian taking on 2 IDF spokesmen at the same time. How do you think that's going to go? Turn this off. And what am I doing? All right. There we go. Let's get into it.
Why is it, by the way, that this is always a one-way street? Iran said this. Iran threatened this. This is about a regime change war. Why are we doing this?
Yes, I think it's quite clear that Benjamin Netanyahu wants regime change in Iran, but that is not the same as the regime in Iran wanting to destroy Israel.
What was overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi? Was that simply replacing the leader, or was that destroying the country?
Let's stick to Israel and Iran.
No.
The Israelis say we want regime change. The Iranians say we want to wipe you off the map.
Do you guys think Benjamin Netanyahu has been mistaken for 30 years, claiming that Iran is a year to 3 years away from a nuke? Or was he lying?
Israel was surrounded by many, many countries who don't believe that it has a right to exist.
So I'm the moral relativist,
yes.
But then when I point out what one side actually did, you run away from it. Are you an Israeli? Why are you constantly running cover for them?
Because I believe in speaking the truth and being honest instead of dragging in stuff that's irrelevant. So the American government is so gullible that they just go around invading countries on the say-so of Israel.
This isn't a secret. He's advocating that we fight more wars. And I'm telling you that this war, which we do not need to fight, which is not in our interest, has the potential to be devastating. Ooh.
Nothing divides opinion more than war, and wars are often both launched and ended on the strength of popular support or opposition. When the stakes are so high and the consequences are so significant, everybody gets a say. In my view, that applies even if you haven't been to the place where it's happening. Much of the debate about the Iran crisis and others seems to boil down to some big themes: morality versus reality, idealism or pragmatism, intervention versus isolation, populists or lobbyists. For a big picture debate on a world at war, I'm joined by two of our favourite uncensored contributors who often trade respectful barbs on these matters and more. Konstantin Kisin is an author, satirist, and co-host of Trigonometry. Dave Smith is a libertarian commentator, a comedian, and the host of Part of the Problem. Well, welcome to both of you. Dave, great to have you back so soon. As you know, after your last appearance, I got chewed up and spat across cyberspace. Which I found quite an amusing thing to watch go down. What did you make of it?
Oh, I thought it was just so pathetic.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I had mentioned this before, but if you, as I'm sure you do recall, but after my friend Daryl Cooper was on Tucker Carlson's show and he made some comments that you objected to, and I was defending him and giving my point of view on it. You had me on a panel. It's probably the most contentious that me and you have been on the show. You had me on 3-on-1 with it was Seth Dillon and then a world-renowned historian from the House of Lords. You know, like the leading expert.
He actually is Andrew Roberts. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I took my lumps. I tried to make my argument as compelling as I could. It was like I didn't go online and just throw a bitch fest for the next week over how unfair it was. It's just pathetic. And I'm sorry, but Natasha was just lying through her teeth the whole time. And she and lies that, as you pointed out, insult the intelligence of the host and the viewers. And I thought you were absolutely right to give her pushback for that. So it was. I thought. Number one, I thought you were right on the show. I obviously admitted.
Stream Deck's not working, so I did that Natasha debate. Go check it in the archives. You can check the whole debate, or I did a clip of it too.
I'm a little bit biased on the topic, but I thought the reaction online was just truly embarrassing.
You know what was interesting? If they'd actually just said to me, you know what, Piers, did you go a little bit too far on the interrupting? Could you have reined back 10, 20%? I probably would have said yes, probably. I conceded that to some friends of mine. Yeah, probably slightly overdid it. My mother's always a good litmus test. She was like, you did go at her a bit. You know, I was like, okay. But then I was reminded that she was telling massive whoppers with real consequential elements to them, denying, you know, appalling things like the killing of the 9 out of 10 children in that one airstrike and so on. Or
never let women tell you when you're behaving badly. They don't know what they're talking about.
At least trying to cast doubt over whether it had been proven, which I just found so reprehensible. But also, I just felt this is somebody who purports to be an international barrister in this area, who's clearly not, has got a horse in the race, right? Because it's lawyers for Israel is who she represents. If you can't handle a bit of interrupting from someone like me, you're probably in the wrong profession. Is what I thought. It's like it's supposed to be part of your job, literally arguing with people, often in an animated way. Anyway, let's get into this argument because this was precipitated for those who don't follow you guys as assiduously as I do, and I'm a big fan of both of you. Konstantin, you called out Dave on X for accusing the actor Rob Schneider of talking with confidence on topics he doesn't necessarily understand. You said that's exactly what Douglas Murray had accused Dave of doing when they had a spat on Joe Rogan. And you said on X, I'm not trying to be a dick, but this is exactly what Douglas was saying to you. He was saying you talk about things you don't understand with a level of confidence that is inappropriate, and you pretended he was calling for censorship. You can't have it both ways. Okay, you've got Dave sitting here. You don't want to be a dick, which I appreciate because I've had a festival of that from George Galloway this week. So let's not get into dick measurement contests. But this whole argument really about people who are supposedly ill-equipped to talk about things, whether it's Dave because he's a comedian by stock in trade, whether it's Rob Schneider, whether it's anyone really. Explain where you come from on that.
Well, first of all, you say it's been precipitated by this. I think the disagreements between Dave and I run about as long as the Iran-Israel conflict, so and probably longer. So we disagree on a lot of stuff. You've invited me on your show many, many times over the last year. I've always said no when talking about this stuff because I don't consider myself an expert on these issues, which is why I've consistently turned it down. The only reason I'm here tonight, by the way, is you said to me, I'm not going on your show until you come back on mine. And I thought that was actually fair enough. So particularly given that you have me here with somebody who's also not an expert, this is essentially two guys in a bar, in a pub, chatting about their opinions. So that's fine. However, I think the reality is that an issue of this complexity and seriousness should not be addressed by a former comedian and a current comedian. I don't really think that's the right approach. But
notice how he's framing that as if only the experts are allowed to really discuss it. We're just two guys in a bar talking. That's all this is. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. The experts are what? Who the Zionists decide are going to tell us what's what? Fuck you. Anybody can have an opinion about this. Anybody.
My point to Dave is something else. My point to Dave is whenever he wants to take a shortcut and disagree with someone who's saying something that's different to him, he will resort to exactly the same thing that Douglas said to him, which is, you actually don't really know what you're talking about. You don't have the expertise to talk about this. You haven't been to the region. You haven't read enough. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. And that's exactly what Douglas was saying to Dave. Now, you can agree or disagree with whether that's right or wrong, but the fact that Dave is violating his own standards seems to me to be pretty hypocritical.
Dave, you're a rank hypocrite.
That's what Piers saying it, not me. I did not add the word rank.
Yeah, you would have done if he thought about it.
No, I'm sorry. There's for the record, I just want to say me and Rob Schneider made up. I've always been a big fan of his. We message back and forth, and we're cool. But no, I'm sorry. Obviously, this is ridiculous, and there's no hypocrisy here at all. It is if we were to come to a debate, and what I brought to the debate was I just said, "Shut up," and that was all I did for the debate, was just tell you to shut up. And I had no argument, and I didn't counter any of your arguments, but I just told you to shut up. And you were to say, man, that was a really ridiculous way to debate. And then I pointed out that you had also told someone to shut up once in your life. That wouldn't mean you're guilty of hypocrisy. It's a completely different standard to be dismissive to someone on Twitter than to agree to debate them on the biggest show in the world, show up in front of tens of millions of people, and your argument essentially is just to dismiss them. Your point doesn't matter. So no, and also, clearly, I wasn't telling Rob Schneider because he's a comedian, he can't have an opinion on this. I was telling him that I don't really think he knows what he's talking about on this issue. And then which is exactly what Douglas said
to you.
Yes, but he didn't back it up with anything. That's the point.
And by the way,
Konstantin, no one would have had a problem. The whole point was that Douglas had an opportunity to demonstrate his superior level of expertise and did not. And this is the overwhelming opinion.
Well, I don't think that's quite true. I think on a lot of the subjects you debated, he actually did give very good reasons why he disagreed. Now, as you remember, I wrote an article at the time talking about that situation. I did concede that I thought Douglas should have lent more into the arguments. The way you and I have always debated has been on that basis, right? And I think that is true. But I don't think this argument about Twitter really works, because when you go on our mutual friend Joe Rogan's show, you're in front of millions of people. When you and I are exchanging, or you and Rob are exchanging arguments on X, we're also in front of millions of people. We're also having a debate. I don't understand what the difference is.
You don't understand the difference between like dismissing someone on Twitter and agreeing to debate them and showing up with nothing but dismissing them?
Rob made a series of arguments on Twitter to you in front of those same millions of people that saw you on Joe Rogan, and instead of addressing his arguments with counter arguments, which is the standard that you normally apply and you demand that other people apply to you, you instead basically said, shut up, Rob, you don't know what you're talking about.
Piers,
just because you read one book doesn't mean you know what you're talking about, which is exactly what a lot of people said to you, and you got very upset about it and pretended they were trying to censor you.
No, okay. There's a couple different things here. Number one, Piers, as I told you, I think you, I believe, were my first appearance after the Douglas Murray debate on Joe Rogan. And the first thing I said to you was that I go, look, there's been a lot of people who have been challenged to debates who say, I'm not going to debate that guy. He's beneath me. I've done that with other people. And then there's been people who accept and show up to the debate. I said, Douglas Murray's fatal flaw was that he did both. He accepted and then showed up and said, I'm above you. I shouldn't even be debating you. And it backfired on him. Now, as far as I'm sorry, what was your second point there? another response to that. What was the other thing you said, Konstantin?
I don't remember the sequence of the points that I made. What do you mean exactly?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna save you both, because I think we've probably dealt with the element about whether you should be debating or talking about these things. You're both here to talk about stuff.
Telling someone that you don't know what you're talking about is very different than saying you're not an expert. You have no reason to even be talking about this. Stop even talking about it because you're not an expert. You haven't been there. That's quite a bit different.
Enough about 9 to 5. What about Cozy Earth's best-selling in the Middle East?
See them bills,
Dave,
Pierce.
to put it mildly, does not agree and thinks he should now be impeached for betrayal. So first of all, Konstantin, why, in your estimation, has Trump played an absolute blinder?
Just to put this in context, I said this, I think, on Friday. I spent that week when these initial strikes happened in Washington, D.C., and the point that I was making is I don't think that, certainly none of the people I met in Washington, D.C. with any insider knowledge thought that Benjamin Netanyahu had ordered these strikes without at least a wink and a nod from President Trump. So President Trump is doing something that from what I remember, he said it between 30 and 40 times on the campaign trail, which is Iran must not be allowed to get a bomb. And he's achieving that outcome while not taking any of the blame or any of the flag for it. That was the case on Friday. Obviously, the situation has evolved since then, and there's now a much bigger debate. But at that time, he had absolutely played a blinder in allowing Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli military to achieve the military objective, while also sort of claiming that he's not involved and kind of at that time getting away with it.
If he now gets involved, as the jungle drums seem to be suggesting.
So he's trying to make this point that Trump said that Iran can't get a nuclear weapon. Okay, fair enough. But you also said you're not getting any wars in the Middle East. You also said you're not doing regime change wars. You said you're not going to fight in that region because those are nightmares. So wouldn't that mean that you have to use both of those? If you say both of those things, wouldn't that imply that you have to use political means to make that happen instead of just attacking and bombing little girls in school? I think it does.
That is a massive moment for Donald Trump, I would say. I mean, you could argue that is the most important decision he will have taken as a president, and maybe the most important decision he ever takes. If he actually starts bombing with American forces, Iran, that is a massive thing to be doing. Do you think it's, as Tucker Carlson says, something that could imperil his presidency?
We are in the unknown, so nobody knows how this is going to play out. I think we should all be honest about that and be fair. What I think...
Apparently, we did know. We did know.
It really fundamentally depends on what you mean by the word involved. If you mean that America is going to help Israel shoot down ballistic missiles, I don't know that will be such a major decision or will be seen as...
Well, let me paint a picture where they use a B-52 bomber and they drop one of the buster bombs to try and get to the nuclear sites that the Israelis can't get to because they haven't got that technology. If they were to do that, in other words, directly use American forces to do the bombing, would your calculation about Trump change?
These are all hypotheticals, because the one thing that I do know, and I think Dave will tell you this himself, is the thing that people in the United States, from talking to people there, are most concerned about is any sort of boots on the ground scenario. They do not want American soldiers in the Middle East. I think they're right not to. I genuinely think that. And so fundamentally, it really depends on what happens and the way that it happens. And you're right, it is a big decision. But I think it's, but, you know, all this stuff, I mean, Dave's calling for President Trump to be impeached over this, when this is something that he promised the American people 30 to 40 times on the campaign trail.
Well, okay,
but
on that, I would clarify that. He said that number of times that Iran should not be allowed to have a nuclear bomb. That is indisputable. He also has consistently portrayed himself as a man who wants peace, not war. I'm going to solve the problem in Ukraine, solve the Middle East, and so on. This would go against all of his claims to be that person.
And the thousands of times on the campaign trail he said, no new wars, no Middle East wars, no regime change wars. Then he did all of it.
And of course, the big debate behind all this is that Tulsi Gabbard, his own director of national intelligence, the IAEA director last night, they both said in very recent times, including 24 hours ago, in the case of the Atomic Agency, that there is no evidence that they've seen that Iran is anywhere near progressing to an actual nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key point of this.
So I like Tulsi Gabbard. We've had her on Trigonometry. I think she's a great human being, which is why I did her the courtesy of watching the full clip of her testimony that she gave. And what she says in that testimony is that Iran is not pursuing the nuclear weapons program, but what Iran is doing is enriching uranium to 60% and beyond, which is a...
Whoopity-doo! Don't we do that too? Doesn't Israel do that too? Why are they allowed to? Because they lied to us? Okay.
Clear indication of their desire either to actually make nuclear weapons or to move much, much closer to a position to be able to make them. As I think Dave would concede from all the nuclear scientists, what they're saying is you need about 3 to 5% enriched uranium for civilian purposes. They are now enriching uranium to 60%. And by the way, this is also in the IAEA report, and no one's talking about this. They're using their 20% uranium to make 60% uranium, which is, again, an indicator of the fact that they're moving either towards attempting to make nuclear weapons at some point or to be in a position to do so. And that is the threat. And there is no other reason for them to be doing that. So yes, they don't have the exact bomb ready to go, but they're moving in that direction. And Israel is in a position to deal with that threat for the first time in a very long time. And I understand why they're doing it.
Okay, Dave, before we get to your response to that, just explain to people why you have called what Donald Trump is doing a betrayal and why you think he should be impeached.
Well, I think he has brought us into a war with Iran. Now, how much this war escalates, we will see. And I think that this is it is the most profoundly risky and reckless policy he could have pursued, or just about. I think this is very likely going to lead to a catastrophe, much like all of the other terror wars, including the one, Piers, that you heroically led the opposition in the UK to in 2003, of course, referring to the war in Iraq. And as you remember well, Piers, from that war, the justifications just kept constantly changing. And then when one fell away, they'd move to the next one. Oh, he was in on 9/11. Okay, he wasn't in on 9/11. But he's got weapons of mass destruction. Okay, he doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, but we have to liberate the people or bring democracy. And I've already seen that it's remarkable how sped up it is. I've already seen so many of the war hawks bouncing back and forth between all of these different justifications. But of course, in the end there, all of the justifications failed. Not only did he not have weapons of mass destruction, not only was he not in on 9/11, but we also didn't liberate the people. The worst thing that ever happened to the people of Iraq was George W. Bush's war there. And as far as Iran enriching up to 60%, yes, it's true that they only need, I think, between 3 to 5% for civilian nuclear purposes, and maybe some like around 20 to 25% for some medical needs. But that is what is known as a latent nuclear deterrent. There is another reason why they would have that. They want to demonstrate that they can get the bomb, but they don't have it right now to stop something like this happening. But the bottom line is that since 2007, our CIA has said they don't have nuclear weapons, and they're not striving to achieve them. Tulsi Gabbard, not only in her testimony, but in the Director of National Intelligence as her capacity serving that role, in the annual threat assessment just put out a couple months ago, reaffirmed the same thing. And so is the global community. Iran has been willing to negotiate this entire time. And maybe the negotiations haven't been successful, but even Benjamin Netanyahu, in his interview with Brett Baer the other day, couldn't even manage to lie and say that they've broken out and they're pursuing. He said maybe a year. The same thing he's been saying since I was 7 years old, lying over and over and over again because he wants a regime change war here. And he's said this in his own words, and so have all of the neoconservatives. Look, right here on your show, Piers, which I think might be the most fascinating moment in the history of Uncensored, when General Wesley Clark reaffirmed that not only had he seen the plans to overthrow 7 countries in 5 years, but that it went all the way back to the early 90s, and that it was revived, in his words, in a study paid for by the Israelis. They've gotten the 6 other ones. This is the 7th one. This war is not about nukes that Iran doesn't have. And just one more point I would make, as the great Scott Horton said the other day. Look, I mean, even if they were developing nukes, which they're not, Truman knew that the Soviets were developing nukes. He didn't launch an aggressive war against them for it. And Johnson knew that Mao Zedong was developing nukes. He still didn't launch an aggressive war against the country. And the point is that you could sit here and say, just like they did with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, you could sit here and say, no, we're just going to have a no-fly zone. We won't have boots on the ground. We won't have this. Look, Iran has already demonstrated, in a few days that this war has been going on, that they're more capable than all of the other countries we picked on in the terror wars. They've already hit Israel and killed people there. What's going to happen when a few Americans get killed? Hopefully this doesn't, but what's going to happen if that happens?
You know what'll happen. That'll be their excuse for getting into another quagmire because they killed some Americans who were trying to kill them. So now we got to stay there for 20 years. They do this all the time and you act like you don't see it.
What do you think Donald Trump's going to do?
Many of us carry around bulky, worn-out
How much
wallets
money
that are
does he
uncomfortable
need?
and full of junk. Piers, P-I-E-R-S.
To address that, Piers, first of all, you've got to think about this and understand this from an Israeli perspective in the situation. A lot of people think that Israel has just launched the war in Iran. That's not how Israel sees this at all. Israel has been at war with Iran since October the 7th, when an Iranian proxy, Hamas, attacked them. On October the 8th, an Iranian proxy, Hezbollah, began to fire rockets into Israel. Then the Houthis, another Iranian proxy, began to attack shipping and also Israel, right? Now, what has happened since
Still waiting for how any of that applies to us. Just waiting.
then is Israel has eliminated those threats to, I was going to say deballed, but decapitated Hezbollah. They dealt with the threat of Hamas, and they are now in a position to deal with the threat they've always been concerned about. Now, why is Israel so concerned about this? Well, first of all, Iran has been saying for a very long time, they don't want regime change in Israel. They want the state of Israel not to exist. Now, think about the fact that in the post-October 7 world, they cannot take the risk that they're only enriching uranium to 60% because they want to threaten to have nuclear weapons. That is not something they can do. And by the way, Piers, there's some...
Why can't they do that? Just curious. Why can't they do that? They're not in the JPCA or whatever the agreement we had with them. We pulled out of that. So what obligation do they have not to do that? Just because you say so?
Something that people don't seem to understand about. You know, we struggle in the West. I really do think we all struggle in the West to understand the fundamentalist mindset. And let me give you an example of what the regime in Iran is like so that we can all understand what the threat here is.
Tell us how mean they are to gays and women. Tell us all about it.
After the Islamic Revolution happened in Iran in 79, the war broke
Why did that happen? Don't skip past that. Why did that happen? Who caused that?
out between Iran and Iraq. And in that war, Iran was at a disadvantage. It was militarily backward. It wasn't financially able to deal with that. And you know what they did? They attempted to mitigate that by recruiting as many child soldiers as they could. We don't know how many because they didn't bother to count, but it's hundreds of thousands. And because some of them were too young and too weak to fight, they didn't send them
Ukraine is drafting 80-year-old men right now, just so you know.
to the front line. They sent them to sweep minefields with their own bodies. That is what this regime does. Now, if those people are willing to do that to their own children, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, what do you think they would do to the children of their enemies if they get a nuclear...
Do you think if we were getting decimated and destroyed, we wouldn't put a gun in our kids' hands and say, hey, defend us? I wouldn't put them on the military, but I understand where their entire existence is dependent upon this. Yeah, children may have to shoot some guns if it gets that bad. And I'm not advocating for it, but that does happen, especially in third world countries.
The weapon, or if they get close to, or if they're allowed to continue funding proxies around the Middle East in order to attack Israel, as they've already done.
Dave Smith.
And Israel's innocent in all that. They didn't do anything. They've never funded any terrorism towards them back, have they? Have they? So if they have, then fuck them. It's not our problem. It's two terrorists fighting each other. Why are we involved?
Okay, can I respond to some of this, Pierce? Because as I always insist when I come on your show, it's always ironically, I get called a moral relativist when I criticize Israel, but I'm the one who's always asking for an objective standard here that we can judge all sides on. Because it's just, yeah, you can just focus on the horrible things that Iran did in the 1980 war with Iraq, which Saddam Hussein launched, and the U.S. backed Saddam Hussein as he was using chemical weapons. And
so that justifies using children to walk into minefields?
No, that.
Why was America backing them if they were so terrible and awful for doing that? What, you act like America has no culpability in any of this. We shouldn't be involved, and it won't be our bad thing. We won't have any culpability.
That is not what I'm saying.
Okay,
let
so
me
what
finish
are you
my
saying?
point here. Instead of just straw manning, well, I was about to say, so
Okay.
let me finish it. Okay. By the way, Israel never killed any children, as you know, Pierce, right? They have the most.
Israel
respect
is
for-
not sending its own children into minefields. It's
Oh, so it's better if you just kill all of their children. That makes it much, much better, Konstantin. You should have said that.
a massive
Okay,
difference.
Konstantin, let me finish my point, and then you can respond to it and see
Go
if
for
you
it.
can take it on. Now, when you sit here and say that they've been at war with Iran since October 7th because Hamas is their proxies. What exactly, proxy means that I would think you have operational control over them or something like that.
Well,
Wouldn't that make America Israel's proxy, since they're getting us to go and attack them? So we're just a proxy now too. Isn't that great? We're proxies.
Let me explain what I think that means, because I've been arguing that point in terms of understanding where Israel comes from on this, which is that there can be no doubt, I don't think, Dave, you would cast doubt on this, that Iran has financially and militarily given active and sustained support for a number of years to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, and to Hamas. I mean, you wouldn't dispute that.
Right. So, Pierce, then by your logic and Konstantin's logic, is Israel our proxy? They just attacked Iran.
Backwards.
Well, I would say that Israel is actually, you could well argue, given the amount of support that America gives Israel militarily and economically, yes.
Fine.
I mean,
Whose boots are going on the ground when that happens? Is it going to be them or us? We're the proxy, Pierce. Y'all just don't see it yet. They're not even considering putting boots on the ground. They're just talking us into doing it. So we're the proxy.
Fine, but
one person's ally is another person's
Can I make some points on this?
But hold on. Let me just.
Yeah, but so I think ally, proxy.
Can I flesh out your Dave? I'm very happy to hear a counter argument. Can I just flesh out Pierce's point a little bit, if that's okay? So here's what we know. According to the State Department's own figures, Iran gives Hamas about $100 million a year. Latest figures. They've been funding Hamas since the early 1990s. Yahya Sinwar said in 2017 that Iran is the single biggest military and financial backer of Hamas's military wing. In September 2023, a month before October the 7th, 500 Hamas fighters and Palestinian Islamic Jihad fighters were being trained by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard abroad. I can't remember if it's in Lebanon or in Iran proper. And there are numerous chronicled, documented meetings between senior commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and Hamas and Hezbollah fighters in the lead up to it. What do you think they were doing? Talking about world peace and swapping hummus recipes? This is something that they've been involved in very heavily, and they can.
This is like a shell game. Don't look under this one, because this is where it's all at. Look here. Look here. You think Israel's not funding any terrorism? But if you do it with the military, it's still terrorism. You can blow up children, and that is still terrorism, regardless of whether you do it in a tank or you do it with a pipe bomb. It's still killing children. It's still terrorism.
Continue to be involved in, and Hamas and Hezbollah are the sword hanging over Israel's neck that Iran has used in order to prevent the very thing that's happening now.
Dave?
Okay, so to be clear here, it's an outrage that Iran has sold weapons and given money to Hamas, and therefore Hamas is their proxy. Yet, as we all know, Pierce, and me and you have discussed this, 2 weeks before October 7th, Benjamin Netanyahu sends the head of Mossad to Qatar to make sure that the funding to Hamas continues. Yet, is Hamas now a proxy of Israel? Is Israel at war with itself?
Well, I think on that point, I certainly think that Benjamin Netanyahu, when this is all over, is going to have a monumental day of reckoning. Not
if it's never over, Piers. He just keeps attacking another country to avoid that war crime warrant he's got for him right now. That's the answer. Whenever you say, when's he going to answer for these war crimes? Well, he's got more wars to fight, so he can't yet. Bullshit. He's the one starting the wars. Just go get him.
In the corruption courts, but I think he's going to have a monumental day of reckoning about how he allowed this to happen on his watch, how Mossad so spectacularly dropped the ball. No one can give me a good explanation for why they can carry out this kind of attack on Hezbollah with the pages and carry out so precise an attack in Iran, but didn't apparently know that Hamas was spending 20 years building a tunnel system and didn't know 3,000 of them were about to pour over the border. I will never defend Netanyahu in this. I think he's going to be a busted flush. I suspect he sees this attack on Iran as being a chance to avoid being a busted flush for a little longer than it might have been the case. But there's going to be a day of reckoning for him. And the fact that he actively encouraged billions of dollars to be funneled to Hamas to...
Greatest spies in the world didn't know they were building tunnels underneath the entire city that's technically part of Israel, kinda. They didn't know? How did they not know? They can put a pager in a terrorist's hands and blow them up across the world. but they can't figure out what's going on inside their own borders?
Create a divide and rule strategy between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority has also turned out to be one of the most catastrophically wrong things that an Israeli leader could possibly have done. So, look, that's where I sit with Netanyahu.
None of this makes Hamas an Israel proxy, right?
Okay, fine. Well, yeah, I mean, it did kind of by the definition you guys gave me.
They're not the primary source of their funding or support.
Netanyahu already said he let them get in power. He pushed them up. He wanted them up because he felt like he could control the height of the flame. That's his exact quote. They were a proxy of Israel, just like he admitted. The own leader admitted it, basically.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, it's got to be primary, just being, okay, fine, whatever. Anyway, the point is this, right? Obviously, right now, Israel has taken out much of the Hezbollah leadership. The Houthis have been bombed. I think there's still a bit of a problem for them. They've been absolutely leveling Gaza. And so they think this is the moment. And of course, Bashar al-Assad fell as well. So now they think this is the moment for regime change in Iran. It's the same reason why people like Ben Shapiro were celebrating when Bashar al-Assad fell. Now the Shiite crescent is no longer supplying weapons from Iran to Hezbollah. But I'm not an Israeli. I'm an American. I'm not cheering when the emir of Al-Qaeda takes over in Syria. And listen, whatever you put the risk at here, which if this thing keeps escalating, the risk of this going to a real ground war, another war in the war on terrorism, let me be very clear when I say this. I don't know that America will survive this. We went into the terror wars in a much stronger place than we're going into this one. And this is a much tougher opponent than Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi. We didn't go into the terror wars $37 trillion in debt. We didn't go into the terror wars with the cultural and political and racial divides. We have mass protests in the streets right now over Donald Trump trying to enforce his immigration policy. This is going to be, this has the potential to be an utter disaster. And why should any American or British person, for that matter, why should any of us support this war? Because Israel thinks it's in their interest. Israel has attacked.
Well, I would argue. Okay,
right now, they will tell you. The administration will tell you that we are under attack from all the illegal immigrants here. Right. So that is kind of true. There are a lot of illegals here that need to go. At the same time, we're also our Congress is being invaded by Israel. And what do we do? Instead of addressing those two issues that are on everyone's mind, how about we just go start a war in Iran for Israel? Again, always for Israel.
Okay, look, I would argue it's not just in Israel's interest. I think Iran is an evil regime that oppresses its people, that has funded terrorism.
So was Saddam Hussein.
Well, yeah, I agree. But in Saddam Hussein's case, I never believed.
Saddam Hussein never funded terrorism.
Well, I never believed that Saddam Hussein had WMD. I think the difference
there was no terrorism in Iraq until we got rid of Saddam, actually.
Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans, that's where before they escalate.
I said that before I heard Piers Morgan make that point. I was saying about being a brutally oppressive, oppressive dictator.
I think you can't hold any truck for this Iranian regime. I think a lot of Iranian people would agree with that. I think they would love to get rid of them. I think that Israel has every right to feel threatened by Iran's tentacles in the way they supported 3 different terror groups right on their border.
Yeah, hey, you want to go take a poll in every country and see how many people there want their government overthrown? Do you want to do that? Because I think most countries that would be the case. So who really gives a fuck? We're going to go and take over the world for them because they don't like how their government's running, or how they treat women or gays or whatever. No, why just this one? Because that country wants us to do it.
So I'm not saying that you're not right, that this might all backfire.
Let me just ask you.
I'm not saying it may not backfire. I'm just saying I do understand why Israel has decided to do it now. I think they sense that Iran's regime has never been weaker because of what's happened in Syria, because of what happened to Hezbollah. What's been the most significant moment of the last week? Probably Hezbollah saying we're not getting involved in this, right? So, that to me was a very significant moment. And that may well have emboldened not just Israel to continue pummeling Iran, but also may have emboldened Trump to think, well, actually, if we're ever going to deal with this regime, now is the moment. Now, that's not to say, Dave, that you're not right that this could all backfire horrendously. And if America gets sucked into a ground war, then it will be a complete nightmare. I've got no doubt about that.
Yes, but would you also concede? Would you concede, though, that if you allow Iran to enrich uranium, that also could backfire?
Yes,
right?
I was about to say that. And also I was about to say that Russia is now making pretty worrying noises that if America gets involved, it's not going to tolerate it. So you can't ignore that, given what's happening in Ukraine. But yeah, I think in your point, Konstantin, yes, I when I saw that IAE report, I read it and I thought they've gone from 3% to 60% uranium enrichment. And there's only one reason you would do that. Either you take Dave's view, which is they're doing that because they want to have a form of nuclear deterrent without actually having a bomb. Or if you're Israel, you're like, these people have been funding terrorism against us for decades, and now they've gone from 3% to 60%, way more.
While we're at 96%, keep that in mind too. They're saying that while they're at 96%, and they're not even supposed to have them. Like they're not signed on the NPT. They're not even supposed to. They just lie and say they don't have them, and everybody pretends like it's true because that's America's greatest ally who gives us nothing
that is needed for any civilian use. Clearly, they are on a fast track here to be a nuclear power, and we cannot allow that to happen. So I do. Well, let Konstantin respond first. But
yeah, we like to have the nuclear powers be secret nuclear powers that no one knows about. That's better.
I do. That's why I do understand.
Well, let's be honest.
Why Israel feels the way it does.
Well, exactly. And let's be honest about something here, Piers. The three of us are sitting in comfortable air-conditioned studios on the other side of the world from the region where this is happening. We have the luxury to pontificate about the real reason that Iran is enriching uranium to near weapons grade. Israel does not have the ability to get this wrong and then go, well, I apologize, I got this one wrong, as Dave has done with President Trump. He supported him being elected, and now he's go, I got it wrong, guys, let's impeach him. Israel, if it gets this wrong, gets annihilated. They do not have the luxury of that. Now, Dave.
Right, because they don't have nuclear weapons, right? Right, Konstantin? They don't have that. Just us. We're the only ones who have it. That's why we can control how everyone else gets it, right? They have them. And he knows that. Konstantin knows that. He's a lying scumbag.
I think the point you make about the American people, I have the greatest respect for the American people, and they should determine the course of America themselves. They've elected Donald Trump, and that is the reality. No one here, Piers found out, I think, with some history, that Americans don't like being told what to do by foreigners. And I'm certainly not going to do that. It's up to the American people.
And you can see why this war bothers me, because I know where it's coming from.
Well, I know the American people don't want boots on the ground, and neither do I. And neither do sensible people, I think. I think the extent of Americans' involvement should be to help Israel defend itself against the missile attacks.
Again, I don't even understand that. Why? What do we get?
And let them get the job done themselves. I agree with you. This is Israel's war. They should prosecute it to the best of their ability, and they should deal with the threat that they face from Iran. I don't want a massive involvement of the West. I don't think that's what we need. And by the way, Piers, just one quick point, slightly tangential, but not necessarily very important. For those people who care about what's happening in Ukraine, this is brilliant for Ukraine because Iran has been one of the biggest suppliers of drones, the suicide drones that have been raining down in Ukrainian cities and killing civilians and military personnel there. The fact that Iran and Russia are now having to deal with this situation takes a lot of pressure off Ukraine, and it's good for that reason as well.
All right, Dave.
Fuck you. Fuck Ukraine too. Just get that out on the table. Fuck Ukraine too.
You know, the one thing I would quibble with about what you said earlier was about the way that Iran has responded. They always threaten annihilation when they get attacked, right? Or when they're involved in any kind of skirmish. We've heard it towards the end of last year and nothing really happened. We've heard it again now. And although, yes, they've got through the Iron Dome several times, they've killed some civilians in Tel Aviv. This is indisputable. So they technically have done better in terms of their revenge attack than other countries have fared against Israel. I accept that. But I also think we are far removed from seeing any kind of, huge resistance coming out of Iran. In fact, what you're seeing is their bluff potentially getting called here, that a lot of it has been rhetoric built on sand, literally, and that they don't actually have the military capability to even tackle a country 1/10 its size in terms of population, let alone if the United States was to get involved. So I think what you're seeing is actually the opposite, of the way you characterized it. I don't think you're seeing a massive response from Iran. I think you're seeing as good as they can do, and it's not very much.
Well, look, I mean, this is what remains to be seen, and we don't know. But in 2007, when Dick Cheney was trying to push George W. Bush into war with Iran, it was the Pentagon who stopped George W. Bush from doing it. And it was them who said that we do not have escalation dominance over Iran, essentially meaning that we have, we still have thousands of troops in Iraq right now. We have bases and embassies all throughout the region that they can touch. Now, we'll see, I guess, Piers. I guess we're going to play this game. I guess we're going to play this incredibly risky game.
I agree. It's high risk.
For no reason, essentially, from the United States of America's interests. And, look, this stuff, I'm sorry, I just find this to be too ridiculous. All of the intelligence is saying that they don't have nuclear weapons and they're not pursuing nuclear weapons. There is one country, one government in the Middle East that is not a member of the non-proliferation treaties that has nuclear weapons secretly. And it ain't Iran. It's Israel. I mean, it is so ridiculous.
Well, I agree. It's absurd. As you know, I agree. Look, I agree. I don't understand how Israel is allowed to continue pretending they don't have nuclear weapons.
Pierce is the only moderator who interrupts when he agrees.
But what are you saying? Are you saying Iran should develop nuclear weapons to compensate for that reality? Or
No. What I'm saying is this, okay? Whenever you guys talk about this, even already, and Pierce, I got to say, I thought you were a little bit guilty of this right after October 7th, understandably, perhaps so. But even right now, whenever we talk, it's all about the Israeli perspective, as if we're all Israelis. Oh, Israel can't take the risk that they have 60% enrichment. Israel can't get this wrong the way I could change my mind about supporting Donald Trump. I guess Israel can get it wrong when they lure America into a war, when they pump out propaganda saying that Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. That's okay when they get that one wrong, but they can't get this one wrong. Okay, fine.
Why are you blaming Israel for that? It was your own government lying to us about that. I was protesting against the war in Iraq exactly the same way you and Pierce.
I think we all oppose it.
But it was our government's lying to us. It wasn't about Israel. Why is everything that happens in the world the fall of Israel Day?
This is such a blatant straw man. I didn't say everything in the world is the fault of Israel. I'm saying they were also guilty of this.
But why are you putting the emphasis on them when George W. Bush and Tony Blair were using their bully pulpits to make this point to a far wider audience than some guy in the Middle East called Benjamin Netanyahu?
If you think...
Because Netanyahu came to our Congress and petitioned us to go invade Iraq. That's why. He does it all the time because it's always 2 weeks away from WMDs or nukes. And here's a little news flash. We've been there longer than 2 weeks now. Do they have nukes now? If not, isn't that proof that you're a liar? Because, hey, time doesn't stop when you drop a bomb. It still runs. So it's still, unless you're blowing up the person making the bomb, which they're not, they're blowing up the children in an all-girls school. So I don't think that stops the timer. I think that scientists can still be making that nuclear weapon that was only 2 weeks away. Well, we're more than 2 months away into this little skirmish. And, hey, they still don't have nukes, I guess. So guess somebody lied to us again.
Think that I am removing any of the blame from George W. Bush or Tony Blair. I assure you, you're wrong, and you don't know what you're talking about. I've been blasting them for years. They're war criminals who should be in the Hague.
I agree.
That is not the issue.
Davis said on the record that almost every president probably needs to go to jail for war crimes. So I don't think he's taking the blame off of Bush in any way.
We are talking specifically about the nation of Israel right now, so I'm talking about their responsibility. And why is it, by the way, that this is always a one-way street? I hear all the hawks constantly being like, Iran said this, Iran threatened this. What about the threats in the other direction? Maybe Iran feels like they don't have a choice to not. So look, Muammar Gaddafi, Iran is on the list of 7 countries that are supposed to be overthrown. The U.S. government went and overthrew both of their next-door neighbors, invaded the countries and destroyed them after putting Iran on the axis of evil list when they had nothing to do with 9/11. And then when Muammar Gaddafi denuclearized, they went in there and overthrew him in the most violent, brutal way, was sodomized to death by a pack of madmen. Maybe Iran also feels that they can't get this one wrong. Why are we doing this? This is a country that poses no threat to the United States of America. And if you guys want to try to hang on the fence here and go, hey, I'm not telling Americans what to do. I think Israel should do it on their own. But that's just a fantasy land. They're not doing it on their own. They're doing it with our weapons, with our intelligence support, with our money, with us protecting them from a retaliation strike, and, at least possibly, with our president using negotiations to dupe Iran into thinking that they weren't at risk. I mean, that's what Benjamin Netanyahu
And our boots on the ground when we get to that point too. Watch.
says, and that's what some other reporting says. Maybe that's not the case, but either way, he pretended like he was afterward. So no, none of this is being done without America. This is about a regime change war. All of them said it in their own words. They're on record. Do you guys think Benjamin Netanyahu has been mistaken for 30 years, claiming that Iran is a year to 3 years away from a nuke? Or was he lying?
Well, I think, listen, I think the reality is the thing that struck me was going from 3% to 60% suggests an intent. It suggests an incontrovertible. No one disputes.
They're not the only country that does this.
But nobody disputes that Iran has gone from 3% to 60% in uranium enrichment, right? So that is all. Unlike with Saddam,
just like Israel, just like America, just like North Korea, just like everyone else. Right.
And a WMD that didn't exist. That is indisputable. It's just how you interpret what they're intending to do with that. Now, let me ask you.
Can I just one quick thing on this? So first of all those regime wars you're talking about are the fault of the US and other Western governments who pursued them. That's who's responsible. That's who should be to blame. And as you say, should be prosecuted for that. But the reason people rightly call you a moral relativist, Dave, is that you don't seem to understand the difference between, yes, I think it's quite clear that Benjamin Netanyahu wants regime change in Iran, but that is not the same as the regime in Iran wanting to destroy Israel. There's a big difference. If the mullahs in Iran wanted a different prime minister of Israel, that is not the same as wanting to destroy the entire country. And the reason Israel is as paranoid about these things as it is, let's be honest, it's surrounded, or at least was until recently when opinion in many Arab countries changed towards Israel, thanks to President Trump's Abraham Accords. Israel was surrounded by many, many countries who don't believe that it has a...
Hey, Junior, who picked that location? I didn't make them go there. Did you make them go there? I don't think so. They chose that location and then started wars with every neighbor they have. Why is that on us? Why is that our problem? What makes us have to make that our problem? Because they can't get along anywhere they go. Anywhere they go, they were leaving Europe because they couldn't get along with, Mustache Man over there. And then they get here and now they're fighting with everyone around them. But everyone around them's the bad guy, not them, somehow.
The right to exist. And that's the difference. And that's why people call you a moral relativist.
Well, that's totally ridiculous and makes no sense
Why?
at all. And
None.
It only works. I'm about to answer, Konstantin. Let me finish. Because it only makes sense when you only say, I ascribe the worst of intentions to this regime and the best of intentions to this. What was overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi? Was that simply replacing the leader, or was that destroying the country, turning it into a failed
You've
state?
Brought in a different conflict. Let's stick to Israel and Iran.
No.
The Israelis say we want regime change. The Iranians say we want to wipe you off the map.
Libya was a Middle Eastern Wakanda whenever we deposed their leader, and now they have slavery again. That's where people go to get slaves. That's what happens when we get involved and we pretend like we're liberating them. Right, we're liberating right into slavery.
So that's pretty different.
Hold on. So I'm the moral relativist.
Yes.
But then when I point out what one side actually did, you run away from it and say, oh, no, we can't talk about that.
It's your government that destroyed Libya. It's not Israel. It's your government. Do you know anything
about this? Israel was lobbying for us to do this for years.
Who made the decision to do that?
Our government.
Yes,
and I hold them criminally responsible.
So blame them.
Yes, Konstantin.
We're also blaming the liars who got us into the war with their lies.
Konstantin, why are you an Israeli? Why are you constantly running cover for them?
Because I believe in speaking the truth and being honest instead of dragging in stuff that's irrelevant.
No. It's not irrelevant at all. What are you talking about? Yes, my government is criminally responsible for the war that they launched. And the Israeli government is also responsible for constantly trying to lure my government into more wars. That's what I'm standing up against right now.
So the American government is so gullible that they just go around and
apparently so.
invading countries on the say-so of Israel.
Again, what a straw man, dude. Benjamin Netanyahu came to America in 2002 and testified before Congress that the U.S. should overthrow Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, and the Iranian regime. This isn't a secret. He's advocating that we fight more wars. And I'm telling you that this war, which we do not need to fight, which is not in our interest, has the potential to be devastating to our country, let alone the region. What is the moral relativism in any of that?
I explained to you what the moral relativism is.
I'm not saying that America was that gullible. I'm saying we elect people who are that greedy, right? There are other motivations besides, just being a dummy. No, there are much different motivations here. And the motivation here was greed. Greed caused this. Greed is what's causing this. If Miriam Adelson wouldn't have given a $250 million to Trump, I don't think we would be doing this right now.
Side wants to wipe the other one from the map. The other side wants not to have people who want to do that in charge of that country.
But
that's
Pierce,
the difference.
But Pierce, do you not get my? Let me just see, Pierce. Do you get my point here? This is what they said from the very beginning of the war in Gaza. Israel doesn't want to wipe Gaza off the map. Israel just wants to retrieve the hostages and get it. But they are wiping it off the map. So why do you just get to have this standard where you decide what they want to do? I can't base it on their track record. We can't look at Iraq. We can't look at Libya. We can't look at Afghanistan. Evidently, as all the hogs can see, we can look at World War II. Everything is just like World War II. But it's not like the last 25 years of terror wars.
You can't even look at reality. The shit they actually did. You can't even say, well, you can't talk about him doing it. Y'all are just gullible for listening to him. He's still responsible for the shit he does.
He's off the map left and right.
Well, as you know,
it's their track record.
Yeah, as you know, I've been increasingly critical of the Israel strategy in Gaza. It makes no sense until you hear people like Smodrich talking brazenly and openly about ethnic cleansing. I mean, it doesn't make any pretense. And at that point, I do think that there are certainly people on that in that government.
No, Pierce, because there's sucker fans will just say, well, he's not the government. He's in the fucking government. He is the government. That's like saying Trump's not the government. Yes, he is. If you're in that position and you're talking about it and then you're actually doing it, we still have to pretend like you didn't say you wanted to do it. Come on, man. Y'all have different fucking values here if that's how you see it.
Senior level who absolutely want to get all the Palestinians out of Gaza, out of the West Bank. And if that has been their plan all along from October the 8th, then I was duped, and people that feared that were correct. And we'll have to see how that plays itself out. I hope that is not going to actually be the case. And the people who say on the Israeli side, they say to me, well, Smodrich isn't the government. Well, he's a pretty senior member of that government, and he's not even hiding what he thinks should be happening. Before we finish this, guys, I want to talk about the politics here for Trump as well, because it's really interesting to me. Konstantin, you've got the conservative right in America absolutely split down the middle. You've got Tucker Carlson on one side, and a lot of people who agree with him that this could be a disaster for America, for Trump. He shouldn't be doing it. Obviously, Dave and Tucker Carlson, now unusual bedfellows on this.
This is all before the war, just letting y'all know. This is 11 months old, so this is before we actually started the war we're doing now. This is from the 12-day war. Just keep that in mind.
Yes, but there's always a first time for everything. But you also have a lot of people on the conservative right, Lindsey Graham, John Bolton, others who are absolutely gung-ho to get stuck into Iran here. Is there a danger that politically this really does fragment Trump's base support? And what does that mean for the Republicans, for MAGA, for Trump, for the future, for J.D. Vance and people who are aligned with Trump maybe at the next election and so on?
Well, I should preface this by saying I'm an outside observer in the United States. I do go there a lot. I spend a lot of time there. I speak to people there, but I certainly wouldn't claim to be, the greatest expert in the world about what's happening in America. My sense, unexpert sense of this, is that actually I think your presentation of it is a very online focused presentation. I think if you look at the polling, the vast majority of people in America are basically in the position I described earlier, which is they don't want Iran to get anywhere near or continue to get closer to developing nuclear weapons, and they don't want American boots on the ground. And that's the dilemma that Donald Trump has to navigate. And if he can do that...
Well, there's a third dilemma. You see, this is where it gets more complicated, because I don't think he's even thinking about boots on the ground. But I do think he is thinking, probably as we speak, about whether he allows an American B-52 to take a 30,000-pound bomb and drop it on the nuclear sites, which Israel hasn't got the ability to get to.
Yeah.
I think that is probably
more
likely than not right now.
So let's be honest.
What he may order.
If that happens and it's successful and it doesn't lead to an escalation, everyone's going to love it because Americans love to win and they love to bomb shit, right? Let's be honest. That's the history of the last 20 years. And if that happens, they'll be very happy. And if it goes in a different direction, they will be very unhappy. So you're right. It's a big call. I don't think anyone sitting here or frankly anywhere knows how it's actually going to play out. or whether it's a good idea. And, I'm not sitting here advocating for that necessarily. I think Israel seems to be doing enough damage to significantly degrade any attempts Iran is making to have a nuclear enrichment program, and I hope that's the thing that we pursue. By the way, I don't think it's split MAGA down the middle at all. That's what it appears like on X. I really don't think when you talk to ordinary people that's the situation in America, especially in the Republican Party, which is overwhelmingly pro-Israel and has been for a very long time.
Okay, Dave Smith.
Not all of it.
There's no question. I mean, I largely agree with Konstantin there. I think if Trump can thread the needle here and not lead to a catastrophe, that he can survive this politically. I do think he's downplaying the split a little bit. It's not just about like polls about how people feel about boots on the ground, which obviously the American people are largely opposed to. And yes, it is true that most of the Republicans do support Israel, although poll after poll has demonstrated that this is really changing with the younger generation. But look,
check now. I
mean, you have a situation right now. And, yesterday, I started the day by denouncing Donald Trump, and I was, taking a lot, trending on Twitter and getting a lot of praise and a lot of insults and all that stuff. But by the end of the day, it was like Tucker Carlson was being insulted by Donald Trump for not even criticizing him, really just criticizing the policy while heaping praise on Donald Trump. But Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, I mean, some of the most influential conservative voices in the United States of America have all come out and really drawn a red line that we do not want to have another war here. So the point is that if it does get to that, and that's a big if, but if it does come to that point, like a real boots on the ground war, Donald Trump will absolutely destroy his coalition and his legacy along with it, as well as his entire domestic agenda. I mean, you need as much political capital as you can get when there's people out on the streets protesting against his immigration policies. And he's risking squandering all of this for something that's absolutely no threat to the United States of America at all, on the side of the country who secretly developed nukes and is not in the non-proliferation treaty, against the country who doesn't have nukes and is in the non-proliferation treaty. It's the most reckless madness a policy could possibly be.
Konstantin.
Well, he's not pursuing that policy. This is what the point I keep making to Dave. What you keep doing, Dave, is taking to the extremist position. No one's talking about boots on the ground except the usual Lindsey Grahams, who no one in the Trump cabinet takes seriously on these issues at all.
The extremist position of we shouldn't fight wars against people who are doing nothing to us. That's such an extreme position to take.
I don't know about that.
They don't. The conversation that's happening is about what is the right level of America's involvement. We will see what that is. And by the way, look, I haven't seen Charlie Kirk, who is genuinely influential, I think, within the MAGA movement, criticize President Trump. I think he's been kind of balanced in his commentary. All the other people, the Candace Owenses, the Tucker Carlsons, etc., the vast majority of people within the conservative movement in America are not taking their opinion on this issue, and the polls bear that out.
Tucker, though,
well, I don't think Tucker.
Let's look now. Let's look at the polls now.
But I would say
Tucker,
people
I
in
think, is
power
a
may not be.
significant
These
voice.
people have huge audiences.
Well,
I'm not saying they don't have huge audiences, but I'm saying a lot of those audiences are not within the conservative movement in
Right,
America.
but when Tucker chewed up Ted Cruz, for example, and did it pretty skillfully, I have to say, it made Cruz look pretty ill-informed about Iran. That's got a massive amount of mainstream media attention today. I think that you can't ignore. I mean, it's interesting to me. Look at the split. The MAGA names against Trump: Candace Owens, you, Dave, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Alex Jones, Matt Walsh, Tucker Carlson. Obviously, then you got the ones for Charlie Kirk's been pretty balanced, like you said. Lindsey Graham, Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, Mark Levine. I mean, I've not seen that kind of split on many issues, and this is potentially the biggest issue of all.
Can I just even responding to what Konstantin just said, because I thought I made this point pretty clear at the beginning, but let me try to make it clear. You can sit here and say nobody's talking about boots on the ground all you want to. This whole thing is about a regime change, and all of the major players have admitted this in their own words. Even Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't saying that Iran was on the cusp of having nuclear weapons.
That could be regime change. But Dave, that could be regime change, as we saw in Syria towards the end of last year in December, when after a long and bloody and awful civil war, suddenly the downfall of Assad happened incredibly quickly, and it didn't involve boots on the ground in any conventional sense. It involved actual Syrian boots from civilians.
Yes, that's right.
And they were able to tell. That's why I see, I don't think it can be ruled out that if enough Iranian people feel that their regime has been humiliated, has actually been exposed for not being able to hit back in the way they've always vowed to, feel that they're weak and disgraced and so on, why couldn't there be an uprising like we saw in Syria at the end of last year? I don't think it can be ruled out completely.
Well, I mean, listen. So, Pierce, just to be clear, because you are right about that, there are the models like Libya and Syria where it didn't require long occupations and nation building, and all you got was a failed state with open-air slave markets, a massive refugee crisis into Europe, and now you have Al-Qaeda in charge of Syria. And excuse me, as an American, my beef is with Al-Qaeda, not
but he's
with
not.
Hezbollah.
He is not. Look, he is not behaving like a member of Al-Qaeda. Now he's the leader of the country. He appears to be.
Oh, so that's okay.
I'm not taking any.
Oh, all right.
I'm not. Listen, I don't take any. As Donald Trump once says, I don't trust anyone. Right. So let's see
I'm
how.
not saying trust.
Let's see how it plays out.
Trust here. Hold on, Pierce. I'm not saying
He trusts somebody. He trusts somebody too much.
trust. This man was fighting against America in the
I know
War,
his
part
history.
of the insurgents, killing our boys.
I know, but
so
look,
why am I supposed to care about
no,
the
but
people
then
who kill
Nelson Mandela,
Israelis, but then I'm supposed to make up with...
Listen, Nelson Mandela was on the UK's prescribed terrorist list under Margaret Thatcher and went on to become one of the greatest people in history and led his country to a more unified place. In other words, Trump is taking a bet that this new leader in Syria actually is a reformed character. And certainly so far, you would have to say that the signs are reasonably encouraging, given the apocalyptic feelings that some people had, that he would simply be Mr. Al-Qaeda presiding over complete mayhem.
And one thing is worth adding, by the way, on this, is that Iran has a history. Iran, just a quick point, Dave, very quick. Iran has a history of 25 years or maybe 26 years of living in a secular and relatively liberal free society. So the people of Persia have a very different history to the countries you're talking about. This is not to say that regime change or the change of a regime does not lead to catastrophe. And
there's no obvious... someone wrote a very good piece about this week. There is no obvious savior waiting in the wings other than the Shah's son, who is a quite divisive character. I've interviewed him, I like him personally, but divisive character. But there's no Mandela figure that you could point to and say is waiting in the wings to potentially come and rescue Iran. That person so far hasn't been identified.
Can I just make a couple quick points on this? Okay, so number one, we launched 25 years of what they are dubbed forever wars on the justification that Al-Qaeda came over here and murdered innocent American citizens. And now I'm supposed to make up with Al-Qaeda and forgive them for that because he put on a three-piece suit while I focus on Israel's enemies. I just find this to be like a crazy ask of the American people. And then, look, it's real easy to sit here and say, oh yeah, they had a strong tradition of liberalism and everything's going to work out this time. For the first time, we're going to have a regime change that's going to work out really smoothly. Iran is so weak. The people hate them so much. This regime has been in power since 1979, spending the vast majority of that time having the most powerful governments in the history of the world, hell-bent on ousting this regime. And they've survived this long. Maybe you guys are right this time, but Pierce, come on, man. You remember the mission accomplished banners. You remember when they had the first elections in Iraq and it even fooled Jon Stewart and he was celebrating, oh, I guess George W. Bush was right. And then we went on to the most brutal and bloody 8 years of civil war that saw 1 million innocent people die. The country absolutely destroyed, massive displacements and horror stories. And so, it's like, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, and maybe it'll make you a little bit uncomfortable, but the amount of people celebrating this thing 4 or 5 days into it, like, oh my God, Israel took out all their targets. Look how easy it was. We've been here before. I've seen this movie.
Fast forward, we're there again.
To be honest with you, Dave, as someone who's not pushing regime change or American involvement, as I've said, in the way that you think people are trying to do, I am celebrating the fact that Iran is no longer enriching uranium to 60%. I think that is worth celebrating. I think that's a good thing. I think we should all be relieved that that's happening.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I think
we should be concerned about the risks.
But I also agree with Dave Smith when he says this could go horribly wrong.
But that's what we're all saying. I'm saying that too.
Yeah, I agree.
This is war. No one knows how it's going to turn out exactly.
I agree.
Apparently Dave did, because look where we're at now.
I agree. I mean, I've
That's
gone
why you
as
don't
far
fight
as
wars
saying,
of choice.
well, I've gone as far as saying I think that unlike the Iraq War in 2003, I feel like this seems a justified action by Israel to protect its people from what is clear fast-moving acceleration of uranium by a lethal enemy that is wedded to terror groups all over its border that want to kill it. I understand that. It seems justified. Now, does that...
Yeah, you don't want Israel having to fight on equal terms where they both have nukes, huh? You can't have that. You got to have them bullying everybody around them because that's the only way they get to exist. That's how they keep their right to exist, by bullying everybody around them.
I mean, I think it's going to work and isn't going to cause huge problems. No. And I think the jury is very firmly out on that. And it's going to be an extremely fascinating and turbulent few weeks and months ahead. And I think right now, Donald Trump, probably the loneliest man in the world, sitting in the White House, working out what does he actually do now. And if he does press the button on attacking Iran, that will go really against pretty much everything he said, other than specifically Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. But in terms of starting a war in the Middle East, that is really antithetical against everything he's said he stands for. So it's a really interesting, momentous decision for Donald Trump to be taking, and the consequences could be enormous. But gentlemen, I've really enjoyed this debate. Thank you both for agreeing to do it. I think it was constructive.
All right. Our next debate is going to be Anna taking on 2 IDF spokesmen. I have not seen this one, but it was recommended by someone who has recommended some good videos in the past, so we're going to check it out. Thanks, Befuddler. Let's go. God damn it. Always does that. I'll just run the whole thing. Screw it.
For 2 years, she's flooded her platform with one-size children, and when it comes to Israeli children, she offers crumbs. That isn't humanitarian, it's selective empathy.
If you're going to be a children's entertainer, you shouldn't have somebody on your show who glorifies the murder of 38 Israeli children.
Miss Rachel is an American, God bless her.
Jewish parents are really afraid because they're showing their kids how to write the letter M, and on the side they're getting a video with Muattaz Aziza who celebrates Hamas. That's very concerning.
It's very hard to not conclude that you were anti-Semitic.
It's reaction to the genocide. You couldn't bear it anymore.
No, it's just murder. It's just cold-blooded murder. That's what it is.
I agree it's murder.
Okay,
obviously.
so then he's a terrorist then, right?
No, he's not a terrorist.
What is he? He's a murderer.
Reacting to the genocide. Yeah, sure, he's a murderer.
It's that special time of year again. Nominees are making their case and rehearsing their speeches. Everyone's having their say on who should get the top prize. Anti-Semite of the Year began 6 years ago as what seemed to be a well-meaning campaign to highlight prominent people who had done or said things which were anti-Semitic. But I'm not alone in noticing that the entry criteria fixed by the Stop Anti-Semitism advocacy group has expanded to pretty much anyone who criticizes the Israeli government. This year's shortlist includes a couple of people who have peddled genuine anti-Semitic tropes, and a lot of people, including Cenk Uygur, Ana Kasparian, and Tucker Carlson, who, to my knowledge, have not. But there's one name getting all the award season buzz this year.
Dinosaur eggs! Days of the week, but yeah! Can you help me teach them to stomp? What a special day! We're so smart! Let's pretend that while we're having fun with Bubbles, Bean starts to pee. Bean, you're peeing on the floor. Pee goes in the potty. Let's walk to the potty.
Yes, it's Miss...
What an anti-Semite.
Rachel, the massively popular children's YouTuber who teaches toddlers, amongst many other things, how to use the potty. Critics say she belongs on the list because she's used her enormous platform to advance Hamas propaganda. She posted this video featuring one of her most popular songs to highlight a 3-year-old Gazan refugee who lost her legs in an Israeli airstrike.
Wake up, little bunnies! Skip, little bunnies, skip, skip, skip. Skip, little bunnies, skip, skip, skip. Skip, little bunnies, skip, skip.
We gave them that bomb. We made it and then gave it to them. He said, here, go blow some shit up. We did that.
Glenn Greenwald, who is Jewish, posted yesterday, most people now see that anti-Semitism has no operational meaning beyond one who criticizes Israel. But having Miss Rachel win will make that clearer, even for the few who don't yet see it. Her crime is speaking sympathetically of Gazan children. Vote Miss Rachel. Well, does he have a point? Joining me to debate this, a 2025 Anti-Semite of the Year nominee, alongside Miss Rachel, Ana Kasparian, who's also the executive producer and host of The Young Turks, Jake Donnelly, aka the Red, White and Blue Jew, Hen Mazik, Israeli influencer and author. So welcome to all of you. All right, let's start with you, Ana Kasparian. You're on the list. You've been nominated. How do you feel about that?
I'll get there next year.
I feel fine about it because obviously the list is not one that actually contains real anti-Semites. It's a list that contains individuals who are sometimes very aggressively critical of a foreign country's government, and that would be the country that's currently engaging in multiple wars in an effort to annex more land and territory that doesn't belong to them. And of course, that's Israel. And if anyone's under the impression that putting me on lists is going to dissuade me from speaking the truth about what's going on in the Middle East, they'd sadly be mistaken. And I know a little information about the grotesque woman behind Stop Anti-Semitism, which we can talk about a little bit if you'd like. But I feel fine about being included in that list. And Miss Rachel is a national treasure.
Well, let's come to the case against her before I go to my other panelists. The Stop Anti-Semitism
I'd have gone with a booger wiper, but whatever.
Citation for Miss Rachel's nomination states since earlier this year, Miss Rachel has published Hamas propaganda to millions, sharing debunked images, inflated casualty claims, and almost entirely ignoring Israeli child victims. My point to you, Jake Donnelly, she's entitled, if she wants, to give more attention to kids in Gaza than Israeli kids. If she completely ignored what has happened to Israeli children, that's one thing. But if she's acknowledged it, but chosen to give more of her time to Gazan children, that doesn't make her anti-Semitic.
No, it doesn't. And first up, Piers, thank you so much for having me on. I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak about this. What makes her anti-Semitic is her relationship with Motez Azaza. Because if you're going to be a children's entertainer, you shouldn't have somebody on your show.
So she's an anti-Semite by association. That's what he's saying. Okay.
Who glorifies the murder of 38 Israeli children. That doesn't make any sense to me. And any parent that puts their child in front of somebody like that so that she can push her propaganda, use fake AI imagery in order to do so, and to continue to just publish everywhere the Hamas-run numbers, 14,000 imminent starving children. I've yet to see where any of those are. Yeah, that is what makes you an anti-Semite. So it's not necessarily the one-sided stuff that she does, but when you go and you talk about all of the children, well, okay, why don't you talk about the 12 children that were murdered by Hezbollah? The Druze children who are simply playing soccer. She says that she cares about all of the children, but I don't see that. In fact, I see what she's doing as a political game, and I'd rather call this stuff out in 1933 than call it out in November 1938. And that's what I'm seeing. And
okay,
that's
and also,
so one side has 12 dead children, and the other side has 10,000 dead children, and you don't see the difference. Okay.
To be clear, then, all right. But to be clear, if that is your criteria, is that she shows selective empathy, and we'll come to the issue of Motaz Azaza in a moment. But if that's your criteria, should we then apply the same criteria to any pro-Israeli commentator on social media or on the airways, wherever it may be, who has shown selective empathy towards the plight of Israeli children, but never addressed the plight of Palestinian children? Are they Islamophobic?
I think those were two different questions. So for somebody like me, let's just take my case. You will see on my actual X page that I am constantly republishing, reposting, and commenting on the Center for Peace Communications, which are the people who are pushing the Palestinians that are against both Hamas as well as the Palestinian Authority. So when it comes to people who are acting entirely one-sided, I don't want any of that. We have Ana here, and actually, from my opinion, Ana's not the worst of the worst by any stretch of the imagination.
But do you believe she's anti-Semitic?
No, I do not. I do not believe that Ana is anti-Semitic. Okay. I think that she can sometimes be easily manipulated and push the same Hamas-run Ministry of Health numbers.
And out of interest, Jake. And Jake, before Ana, I'll come to Ana. I'll let you respond.
Let's talk about data. No. I get to respond to that. Let's talk about data from the IDF. the IDF's internal data. I don't read American media on what's happening in the Middle East. I actually like to read Israeli media because they're super honest, and I really appreciate their honesty. So Israeli papers
Ask them if they have nukes.
got a hold of the IDF's internal data in regard to civilian casualties in Gaza. And their own data indicates 83% of people slaughtered in Gaza, 83% are civilians.
That's
Israel,
not in
the
any way
IDF
what
just
the-
shot and killed. Stop, don't interrupt me. IDF just shot and killed an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old in Gaza, claiming that they had crossed the yellow line when no such thing happened. And they tried to make it seem as though an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old are literal militants deserving of the type of slaughter they were met with.
But Anna, the other side lost 12 children, you know, from the people that they've been blowing up.
Okay, listen, I am not going to sit here and just stomach the ridiculous propaganda and lies that keeps getting regurgitated over and over and over again. You guys have to find better talking points. You really do, because these have been debunked over and over again on this show, and they will continue to be debunked on this show, on my show. Americans aren't stupid. They see what's happening. The evidence is abundantly clear. What's amazing to me is the dehumanization of every human life that isn't Israeli or isn't in favor of what that disgusting genocidal government is up to.
Okay, look, we've had some tech issues, Jake, with your signal, so we're trying to fix that. Let me go to Hen Mazzy.
Divine intervention must be.
Well, Hen Mazzy, you've been listening to this. What is your response to what Anna just said?
Yeah, it's rich to speak about dehumanization when from a person that said that all Israelis should be ashamed of themselves, that we are demons, that the Jewish lobby controls the U.S., that Israel is a Nazi state.
The Jewish lobby does control the.
How would that be dehumanization, though? Like they're saying you should be ashamed. That's a trait that only humans have. Wouldn't that make them more human? Like, if you're saying that they can have a trait that only a human can have, then how are you dehumanizing them?
US.
Okay, all right. So
Where's
just
the lie?
prove my point. Thanks. The problem is that you are not able to look in the mirror and see who you are and what you're doing to the Jewish community.
Oh, I look in the
and
mirror
once the
every day,
Jewish
baby.
community is calling you out for the way you
love
are
what I see.
harming us, instead of listening and trying to change your ways, you're doubling down. And as long as you're going to do that, yes, we are going to continue calling you what you are and saying that what you're doing is really
Listen,
harming
scum
our
can call me
community. So
whatever
it's
they want. I
what's
don't
disgusting here, Anna, is that you are unable to hear to a minority community telling you that your words have contributed to an atmosphere that gets our people killed outside of our synagogues because of your words, because of statements that you said, that others like you have
They
said.
weren't included on the anti-Semite list, by the way. The
What's
guy
that?
who killed 2 Israeli embassy workers, this year, okay, the actual anti-Semite who murdered people, didn't make it on the list.
Right.
Fascinating.
Right.
That
So,
individual
Hen, do you think
Whoever's making that list is just a star fucker, or they've never seen my content.
that Anna,
is.
Hen, do you think that Anna is anti-Semitic?
I think that her words are deeply anti-Semitic. I think she has contributed to an atmosphere that gets our people killed. And I think it's totally legitimate to call this out. And if a minority community is telling you this, you should listen to us. And yes, maybe this person that...
But hang on. So let me just stop you there, because I've been branded anti-Semitic, okay, by a lot of people on social media.
And I've defended you, previously.
Right, because I deeply resent it.
Right.
Because as everybody remembers, who watches this show, for many, many, many long months after the October the 7th attacks, I vigorously and loudly defended Israel's right to defend itself. This year, from the start of this year...
Why would you even defend against that? We're to the point now where they're just as bad as like the woke side that was trying to say everything's racist. Milk is racist. If you drink milk, you're racist. Don't even care. Good, I'm going to drink my milk and I'm going to be racist then. Like, why do you care? Call me whatever the fuck you want. Y'all worry about shit like that. Like, you know that they call everybody that, so who cares? Everybody's it too, so good.
Here onwards, I began to be more and more critical of the Israeli government, not of the Israeli people, not of Israel. I wasn't denying its existence. I wasn't attacking Jewish people or Israeli people, specifically the government, Benjamin Netanyahu, and also specifically the right-wing headbangers in that government like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. And for my troubles, despite painstakingly making it clear who was the object of my criticism, I was regularly branded anti-Semitic. So I do believe it's something that's been thrown around way too much. It's done in a deliberate, concerted effort to shut people up from criticizing anything that Israel's doing. So yes, there is genuine anti-Semitism, no question. I think it's been rising in the last 2-3 years, which is appalling. But throwing it around to silence people, and I'm not accusing you, Hen, I'm just saying this is what I've been on the receiving end, is it's just being used as a stick to censor people and to shut them up. And I think that's abhorrent.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I'm not saying that, yes, some people use anti-Semitism too widely and in a wide brush that they shouldn't have to do it. And I think it's true for every minority community. As a gay person, I see how people use the term homophobic quite casually to say anyone that has any criticism of LGBTQ people is homophobic. I understand that it's not like that. And it's the same with anti-Semitism. But that doesn't take away from the severity of people making statements that end up, as Anna mentioned, the same statements that we hear from them are the ones that are being used to shoot Jews outside of our Holocaust Museum in DC.
And what about Miss Rachel? Do you think she's anti-Semitic?
So the anti-Semite isn't the person killing people, it's the person telling them that those people are bad, right? So you can't say those people are bad, otherwise you're the anti-Semite. But they just used that same argument in the last debate. We just saw that it's not Israel's fault when they come and tell us to do shit. You got to blame, it's the fault of the lemming that listens to them, right? So they're talking out of both sides of their mouth as usual.
I don't think she's anti-Semitic, but I think she's really misguided. And I think the fact that when she hosted Moatez Aziza that celebrated Hamas on her platform, and then when Jews called her out, she said trying to defend starving children is not anti-Semitism. It played directly into a medieval blood libel that says that Jews are trying to kill children, and we use anti-Semitism to stop.
Pull out your Israeli talking point fucking bingo card and mark off blood libel. That's a big one.
To stop her from trying to stop us. We're not silencing her. We're calling her out. We're calling her in, rather. And if she just listened to us and have this conversation, if Anna just listened to us and have a conversation instead of screaming every time she hears Jewish person criticize her, I'm sure that next year she wouldn't be on the list.
Well, let me read Miss Rachel's response on Instagram to this nomination. She said, I'm so thankful to Jewish organizations, rabbis, friends, colleagues, and family for standing by me. I'm against anti-Semitism and all forms of hate and racism. I'm incredibly proud of my work to help Palestinian children. With 20,000 Palestinian children killed, most child amputees in modern history, homes, schools, hospitals bombed, 17,000 orphans, everyone should be speaking out. She also went on CNN's Amanpour show and told Christian Amanpour some more of her thoughts about this. This was 2 months ago. Let's take a look.
What was it that made you step out and support these children in Gaza?
How could I not, seeing what was happening on our screens, hearing from Save the Children who had firsthand accounts, knowing that so many children were losing their lives. It's up to over 18,000 children. So as an early childhood educator, I know what children need. They need food. It's being blocked. They need water. It's being blocked. They need to be in school. Their schools have been bombed. They need medical care. I know what children need to thrive, and I know what holds them back. And it was very clear to me, along with so many others in our country and around the world, that it's so critical to speak up.
And she also addressed the criticism she'd faced. This was before this new nomination came out.
Were you ever worried? Because even before you spoke up, it was a hornet's nest of controversy. The idea of speaking up for, let's face it, Palestinian children after October 7th.
I'm not an expert in that area, but I knew that I'm an expert in child development. I have 2 masters in education. I've worked with children my whole life for 20 years. Seeing the images of the children, there was no question that it was the right thing to say something.
Okay, so Jake, when you hear what she says there and you read her statement, she's very keen to stress she's not anti-Semitic. She doesn't hate Jewish people. So why would she be
That's not what you need to be an anti-Semite anymore, Pierce. That's the old rules. Now you can just criticize Israel and you're one. You can just do all kind of shit and you're one. You don't even know you're doing it sometimes and you're one.
Targeted in this way?
Well, we've already discussed it. When you are a children entertainer and you bring somebody on who glorifies a day in which 38 children were murdered, Well, we're going to have some questions as to
Ooh,
I've had
last.
people, but my response to that is I've had many guests on here on the pro-Palestinian
Just doubled. It was 12 a minute ago.
side, not who've glorified October the 7th, but certainly who've refused to condemn it. So does that make me anti-Semitic for giving them a platform?
No, you're a journalist. You're not a children's entertainer, although sometimes it can get pretty childish on this show. But that's not the case here. And if we're talking about anti-Semitism, what actually constitutes anti-Semitism, we already have something on this show where Ana says that 83%, that's just those who were identified. That is a misleading statistic. And either Ana, you know
No, it's not.
how to read
83% of those slaughtered in Gaza were identified as civilians by the
were
IDF.
identified. So you're not
You
reading
can't
the
spin it.
statistic correctly. So
No.
do you either know how to read
83% were
statistics
identified as
correctly,
civilians
or
by the
are you doing
IDF,
this on
according to
purpose?
Israeli
You're the one that
papers.
talked
Everyone.
about
It is their numbers. She didn't just make that number up. That's the number they say, even though they don't know the numerator or the denominator when they do the ratios. So it's probably a little bit worse.
Check that out.
Yeah, everyone can
You're the one that
Google
talked
it.
about
You
It's
have no
fine.
argument,
Everyone can see
because the
line.
truth is
You're
on
the
my
one that's
side, and I
propagating
know that's so
pro-Hamas
difficult. So stop
propaganda.
embarrassing yourself.
Well, Anna, let me
I'm not
ask you though.
embarrassing myself. I
Anna,
understand
let me ask
statistics,
Anna
you
this.
don't.
Now, hang on. Let me ask Anna this question. Was it unwise of Miss Rachel to be so outspoken about this? Not because she's not entitled to, or it's not an incredibly important issue, but the fact she is a children's entertainer with a huge, huge audience. Was it unwise of her to get overtly political like this?
The days of Zionists bullying Americans into silence is over. Put that in your pipe and
That's a
smoke
different
it.
question, though.
I'd like to read a quote.
Oh, that was great.
I'd like to read a quote.
Yeah, the biggest bully on the
Miss
internet is
Rachel,
talking about bullying. Give me a break.
Miss
Come on.
Rachel is an American. God bless her.
Did Anna get anyone to start a war for her? No. So how's she the biggest bully?
And as an American, she is afforded the freedom
She
to
is.
speak
No one's
out
doubting
against
that. Listen,
injustice
no,
as she
hang
sees
on,
it.
Anna,
So do
no
I
one-
think it's wise?
No, but no one's-
Obviously, I think it's wise.
No
It's
one's
what I
doubting.
do for a living.
No one's doubting her
I
right
think it's
to.
wise.
No one's doubting her
I think
right
it's
to
wise.
say it.
Yes.
But it's whether it's.
Answered your question. I think it's wise. Because they're going to call everyone an anti-Semite.
What would you say
As
if she-
long as you're
all
not
right, but
bowing down
what
to
would
the
she say-
government of Israel, they're going to call you an anti-Semite.
Right,
They
but
don't
what-
even care about the value of Jewish lives here in the United States.
Okay, but Anna-
if
Stop
those
it.
Jewish individuals are critical of Israel,
But Anna,
it's
if it
all
was-
about Israel.
All right.
This is about an ideology, not about an identity, a heritage, a religion, or an ethnicity.
Okay, but if it
Make
was-
sure you realize that. Because
Okay, but if it was
weaponizing anti-Semitism for Israel's purposes is so
Right,
disgusting.
but if it was a
I'm loving it. A Goyim uprising. Yes.
children's entertainer who was pro-Israeli,
yeah.
Oh, Anna would have.
what would you say? And be honest about this.
If she is showing the humanity of Israeli children, why would I have a problem with that?
Oh, come on.
Really?
And Pierce, you've had me on this show multiple times. Yeah, I 100%.
But if you
had me on
deem-
this
if
show
you
multiple
deem she
times.
only
You
cared about
asked me
Israeli kids-
multiple times.
Right. But if you
Do you
deem
know
she
what year
cared,
it is? Pierce, do you know what year it is? Okay, it's not October 7th, 2023. Since then, over 2.5 years later, tens of thousands of children have been slaughtered on the Palestinian side.
Yeah, but that's not my
So when
question.
they bring up the what
That's
about
not my question.
what about everyone condemns what happened to Israeli civilians
Yeah, but
on
that's not my
October 7th.
question.
I have done that
Anna,
on this show.
Anna, you're answering a different.
I have done that on this show.
Yeah, I'm not
the
questioning-
Thing is, the two
I'm not
individuals
questioning
on
that.
this panel right now do not care about Palestinian lives.
Well, I don't think- I don't believe
basically
that's true.
deflect
That's
I
false.
don't believe
focus
that's
on
true.
so-called anti-Semitism.
I don't
that
believe
doesn't
that's true, but
exist.
my question
they don't
was-
care.
my question-
They don't
Israel.
care.
All right,
let me read you a quote.
Let me
then.
talk,
Let me read you a
Anna.
quote.
Let me
this
talk.
is from
Let me talk.
Tali Gottlieb. Tali Gottlieb says, "We have no hostages left. We no longer have to be precise, as if the IDF was ever precise in Gaza. We can attack without mercy. Merciless. What do the two individuals on this panel have to say about that?
Well, I want you
Disgusting
to.
genocidal rhetoric.
Okay, but I just want you to answer my question first, which is actually
ask them.
specifically about whether a children's entertainer with a massive reach, if they were promoting the pro-Israeli position on this war and not really mentioning the
Genocide?
Palestinian side,
No, I would
you?
not think that's a good idea.
So from Pierce's perspective, you have to either support Israel or keep your mouth shut. That's your options. You can't see this and say, hey, maybe the other side, I'm on their side. That's not allowed if you're in media. And you know why he thinks that, because you know who owns media.
Yeah.
So you would not like that to happen?
if they're promoting genocide, I would not.
That's not what he asked.
that.
No, if they were
unwise.
if they were being supportive of Israel, but they weren't mentioning the Palestinians.
Right, the side committing the genocide. That's what she's saying.
Implied much. What would you say about that? Would you think it's appropriate
I
for
would say that
children's
sounds a
entertainment?
lot like American media.
No, but my point would
I would
be
say
that I
that sounds
think
like a- I mean-
I think you would be very critical if a children's entertainer was overtly pro-Israeli. That's the point. So is there a double standard here? On both sides, by the way. I've seen it on both sides. But is there a double standard in how you apply it to this kind of story where if it was the other way round, would you be so...
It is different if you're supporting Jeffrey Dahmer as opposed to the side that's against Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, what is he not getting? Those little children in Gaza aren't killing anybody. They're all dying. And a lot of them in Israel aren't. They're fine. They're going to school, right? That's the issue here. She's allowed to side with the side that's getting destroyed and not side with the people doing the destroying. But Pierce doesn't even understand that option does exist.
Vehement in your defense of it? I suspect not, right? Today's show is sponsored by Oxford Natural. Make it a success story. To watch their peers and...
Probably not, no, because it totally ignores the fact that since
Okay, but
October
that's
7th,
intellectually honest,
the
at
vast
least.
majority of children who have been murdered
You can
are
disagree with
Palestinian
her,
children
but
and maimed.
at least you've been honest that you would feel differently about it if it was the other way around. I mean, this is the point I would make, Hen, about this. And I think this applies to a lot of the stuff in this war. There is a lot of double standard going on, right? A lot of people are much more angry if it's their side in this kind of situation than if it's the other side. I remember Gail Gadot getting hammered, for being pro-Israeli in Hollywood. And whatever you think of her, I'm not a massive fan of hers, but she got a disproportionate amount of abuse for being pro-Israeli to people who've spoken out on the side of the Palestinians.
Aw, poor Wonder Woman. Aw.
So I do think there's a lot of hypocrisy flies around about the condemnation that goes on here. And I do wonder if Miss Rachel had been spouting pro-Israeli sentiment and people believed it was disproportionate to her pro-Palestinian, whether everyone currently racing to defend her would have defended her.
Right, of course not. And I think the problem is that Miss Rachel has, 18 million subscribers on her YouTube channel. It was the most successful Netflix opening show, her children's show. And I think Jewish parents are really afraid because they're showing their kids how to write the letter M, and on the side, they're getting a video with Muatas Aziza who celebrates Hamas. That's very concerning. And to pretend that this is not the issue is just to, it's the same old tired talking points that it's the Israeli government, it's just they're trying to silence us. I don't think we're trying to silence Ms.
So why is the guy that you're saying is the reason that you think she is an anti-Semite, why is he not on the list? If it's so tragic that she's supporting him by having someone on her show, why is he not on this list of anti-Semites? Like, she gets put on the list because she has someone on, but that person's not on the list. That doesn't make any sense.
Rachel or anyone, we're raising real concerns.
Do you accept, Hen, as many people will be watching this saying, but Anna's got a point, right? The number of Palestinian kids that have been killed is exponentially higher than any number of Israeli children who've been killed in this war.
Absolutely.
Like by a multiple of tens of thousands, right?
Yeah. I'm just not going to count bodies. For me, every child that is killed is horrible.
Isn't that funny? The side killing all the people just doesn't want to count bodies. Wonder why.
And yes, I fully condemn the fact that Palestinian children were killed in Gaza and there's still conflict going on. And I hope with all my heart that there will be a different government, that the Israeli government would be replaced, and that we will have a better future for both Israelis and Palestinian children. And I fully agree that there's double standards and any
Yes, their ghosts will be much happier.
hypocrisy on both sides. And I think people that are just pulling us to the sides and to the extreme, like Anna and others, are not helping us. Israelis and Palestinians deserve peace and coexistence and humanity. That's
all right. Well, let me bring in another guest. Stop Anti-Semitism put Guy Christensen, a pro-Palestinian TikTok influencer, on the list too, because he openly endorsed and glorified the murder of 2 Israeli embassy employees in a Washington, D.C. shooting. So the timeline of that, very much. Let's go back to the panel.
Yes, back to the panel.
Well, I don't think he showered himself in glory there, did he, Jake Donnelly? Because he seemed to have no concept of what terrorism is. He literally admitted the guy had committed an act of terrorism, politically motivated murder, wouldn't condemn it because he doesn't think that's terrorism.
anybody on my side performed that poorly, I would ask them to get off social media and never be a voice for my side ever again. And I think it's actually phenomenally hilarious.
Right? Because they don't understand. It's terrorism on both sides. So yeah, you can call it terrorism, but you got to call the other side terrorism too. They're both killing children, right? But it's just excused. Like it's just accepted for some reason. These people are brainwashed into thinking that, hey, it's just a military action when we kill all their children, because they killed 30 of ours. So now we got to kill all of theirs. It's still terrorism. It's still terrorism. So from his perspective, it's probably the war is hell argument, because it's a war to them. Like they're just in a war. We could say both sides in a war are terrorists because they're both killing innocents, right?
That the guy committed, honestly, career suicide just now because he did his own fake death hoax when he was back in high school. So you know what? It's the second time.
Let me bring Anna in. Look, Anna, the thing is, I thought that was pathetic, that interview. This is a guy who doesn't even really understand what the word terrorism means. So, all right, he's what he is. But I can understand why somebody like him would be on that list after that interview. I don't understand why you are. I've never heard you be, to my mind, anti-Semitic. I don't think Ms. Rachel is anti-Semitic. I think she was probably ill-advised to platform Motaz Azaza. I can accept that criticism of her, but her statement seems pretty unequivocal to me. My view is anti-Semites don't hide it. They're quite happy to be anti-Semitic. They're quite happy. They're quite happy to say they hate Jewish people, right? I mean, it's a bit like all these things. It's like proper racists don't hide it. They're quite happy to say they hate people because of their skin color.
What does Jewish people have to do with Israel? They're a secular nation. You're not allowed to dislike Israel because some Jews are there, and now that means you're anti-Semitic? This is so backwards.
Proper homophobes don't hide. So this is why I hate these tags being applied to people when they're making legitimate criticism of governments or institutions or whatever. There's a world of difference. And if someone says emphatically, I'm not anti-Semitic, I have no problem with Jewish people, then I don't know why we wouldn't believe them, unless they've said things to the contrary.
Well, Piers, let me give you an analogy, because I think this will help you kind of understand my worldview and how I grew up, how I was raised. So I'm Armenian, at least my heritage is. Both my parents are Armenian. And growing up, of course, we spoke about the Armenian genocide. And I've heard all of the stories. I know what happened to my ancestors in the Armenian genocide. And when I was in 5th grade, for the first time in my life, I met the first Turkish person, a Turkish student by the name of Tanya, who came to America and was one of my classmates. Because I knew about what happened to Armenians in the genocide, I started bullying her. And I got sent home, and my parents, they're a little old school, so corporal punishment is not frowned upon. But my parents basically told me, they're like, what you did is disgusting. Hating someone simply because they're Turkish is wrong. And what you have to do is look at the system, the government, the entities that carried it out. You can't blame it on the entire Turkish population. This is just a little girl, and what you did is wrong and hateful. In fact, you're lowering yourself to the same type of thinking that the genociders had engaged in. And I kept that lesson with me throughout my entire life. So when I had an opportunity to work at the Young Turks, and I knew that even Cenk Uygur, who I love and respect, did not acknowledge the Armenian genocide, I had a decision to make. Do I hate this man and just write him off? Or do I engage in conversation? And throughout the years, through the debates we had, he absolutely changed his mind, realized he was wrong, now acknowledges the Armenian genocide. But the point that I'm trying to make with that is you have to judge people as individuals. If you don't do that, then you are guilty of the same hate, the same racism, the same Islamophobia that the current Israeli government is engaging in. And so I refuse to let people win and turn me into a hateful, disgusting bigot. That is not who I am. I know who I am in my heart. And I'm always going to speak out against injustice, including the injustice of 2 embassy workers getting shot down in cold blood.
Right.
No one should refer to that as freedom fighting, period.
That is terrorism. And
I agree with everything she just said. That was she's much more articulate than me, obviously. But I agree with every bit of that. You should never hate someone just based off of their ethnicity or whether any of that. Just go talk to them. You'll find plenty of reasons to hate them. all humans suck. Just go talk to them and come up with a real reason to hate them.
And I think he admitted it without even realizing he admitted it. You know, some people on this list, Stu Peters, for example, in January 2024, said the gas chambers, the crematorium so often discussed, they were destroyed at the end of World War II if they were ever there in the first place, and questioned the official death toll of the Holocaust. That is anti-Semitism. When you deny the Holocaust,
One day.
when you try and suggest that these gas chambers and crematoriums may never have been there in the first place, you are genuinely, in my opinion, anti-Semitic and thoroughly deserve to be on that list. But the other names on there, I think, devalue the credibility of this list, and that's just the people I know about.
Think?
Thank you all very much for the debate. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Pierce.
All right, that was a pretty good one, but it was a little old. I'm gonna start trying to get y'all some more fresher debates. It's just been really tough because there haven't been a lot of. I've done all the debates that have been like public, so I go through a bit too many a day. So I'm gonna start trying to find other content like you know, maybe interviews and stuff like that I can do. Just because there's not enough debates to satisfy when I'm doing 3 to 4 a day, 3 times a week. So I'm gonna start trying to do some of those and just mix them in at the end. I'll put them at the end so y'all can bounce if you're not wanting to catch that. But just until more debates start picking up, and I think it's about to start picking up. Oh yeah, and next week, starting on Monday, I think I'm gonna do a week in the evening, late evening time, and then maybe after that I'll come back for it a little bit, and then I eventually plan on doing a night shift where I'll come in at like 8 or 9 at night and just do a show like this. Just to see, I'm just trying to get some subscribers so that I can keep things moving. There we go. All right, I will see y'all Friday. Big show Friday. I got like, I'm gonna try and do like 3 of them on Friday, maybe 4. So I'm gonna let the dog take you out because it was a pretty chill day today. I can find out. There it is. Tell him bye, dog. Peace. See y'all Friday.
I'd rather be a dreamer, I'd rather be